Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining this special Superintendent's webcast. We have a full agenda for you this afternoon. I know a lot of things are moving fast and furious, so we wanted to cover some really important topics with you. We've got the Lieutenant Governor on to talk a little bit about the Kentucky broadband speed test update. We have updates on communications, covering a little bit of that new COVID-19 2.0 guidance document. It's a gigantic document, but it's also includes a searchable table of contents, and we think it would be a one-stop shop for a lot of information that folks have, updated information that folks are looking for around COVID-19. We've got Bo Barnes on from the Kentucky Teachers Retirement System to talk about questions that you may have around that. I know there's a lot of concerns and questions around how we might use retirees this summer and what that might look like this summer and beyond. And we've got a star-studded panel of superintendents, including Rob Clayton from Warren County, David Trimble from Pikeville Independent, Marlene Helm from Fayette County, Carrie Ballinger from Rockcastle, and Karen Chesser from Fort Thomas on to talk about their plans for using federal dollars and how they'll support students in their districts. And then we'll end with a question and answer session. So a really full agenda today. I did want to take just a moment to talk about the news that we heard last night around testing that came from the U.S. Department of Education and the Biden administration. Some of you have already seen my statements on this. I'm disappointed in the determination that I wish that the U.S. Department of Education had allowed states to have more flexibility in how testing would operate this year. It does look like there is an open window for a waiver from accountability provision. So we would not use any testing data to sort of rate, evaluate, rank schools. So that at least is a positive, but there is no flexibility on giving the test. The department did provide some ideas or options around flexible windows and the length of the assessment. That's largely in line with what we've been preparing for. So at KDE, we've been looking at how we can shorten this assessment to the greatest extent we can to make it as easy to administer and as timely to administer as we can. That work is already underway. We've looked at the assessment windows and provided information around when those would be, trying to broaden those out as large as we can. But there are just some hurdles that we're not going to be able to circumnavigate. For example, you've got a lot of kids that may be quarantining, or you may be on a hybrid schedule, or you may not be in person because of things that are happening in your community. And you have students that will not want to come in to be tested. And so they're going to be missing data. So that's a problem we can't get around. We would like to use these sort of assessments for instructional purposes, but we know this data takes a long time to turn around and get back, so it's not really useful for that purpose. And then just all of the disruption that we've had this spring, I've really got questions around how useful this information is going to be. Nevertheless, we've got our marching orders from the U.S. Department of Education that we need to administer an assessment, so we're prepared to do that, and we're prepared to offer districts as much flexibility as we can in that, and a shortened test, and press our test vendor to turn that information around to you as quickly as we can. So I wish I had broader, more flexible news on that, but that's where things are. We will be issuing a statement on this a little bit later on today, so you can look for that. I just wanted to make sure that we touched on that because I know it's fresh information, new news. But now I'll jump back into the rest of our agenda, and I want to welcome Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman with us. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for being on with us, and you've got some information to share about the Kentucky broadband speed test.
I sure do, and thank you guys for having me today. And let me just echo what Commissioner Glass just said. I'm happy to stand beside him in the Department of Education in supporting our schools in being able to teach the whole child and to cultivate personalized learning environments that put our kids first. And I think we're all on the same page when it comes to that. And so I want you to know that you have the support of the commissioner and the department. You have the support of the Secretary of Education and Workforce Development and the Lieutenant Governor, and he's not here, but the governor too. And so just know that. I'm going to share my screen, Tony, if I'm allowed to do that, and I will be very quick.
I believe you should be able to, hopefully.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, can you see it?
Not yet. Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, so I will be quick, but this has been, this Kentucky Broadband Initiative has been on our high on our priority list since we came into office over a year ago. We had already started working on the Kentucky Broadband Initiative from the beginning. Of course, the pandemic happened and thwarted a lot of work across the state, but also created the sense of urgency that we need to get folks on board because our kids are at home, and now everyone knows what we know from the classroom, which is there's a digital divide that cannot be ignored and should not be ignored. And so broadband became bigger than an economic issue and a workforce issue. It also became an issue in every single family's home because it impacted education as well. And so we are really trying to capitalize on that sense of urgency and have moved forward with this initiative. And so we have 3 steps to go through, and this is the first one. It's called the speed test. We need your help, as much help as you can give us, speaking out in your communities, encouraging this among your administrators, your classroom teachers, your school employees, all of the families that darken the door of your schools. And we need everyone to go to speedtest.ky.gov to take the speed test. It is the first step. We cannot provide accurate, reliable internet without knowing where our weakest points are. And that's what this test does. It literally takes 30 seconds. It's completely anonymous. And all you do is log on and put in your information, as much or as little information as you want. And your internet speed is captured, and we utilize that to build a map. And I'll go on to that in just a second. But one of the things I keep hearing is, well, if I don't have internet in my home, then how am I supposed to take the speed test? And so my answer to that is go somewhere that has internet, like a friend's or a relative's house, a local business that offers Wi-Fi, anywhere. And when you log on to speedtest.ky.gov, you enter your home address. And then you choose that you do not have internet access at home, because we definitely need folks who don't have any access at all to make sure that they do that as well. So that's requires a little bit more communication, but is really necessary in helping us to identify the weak spots in terms of broadband across Kentucky. And so we'll take that data that we are able to capture, and with it, we will build a map across Kentucky of all of the high and low points that we know connectivity is and isn't. We will use that map to bridge a relationship with our both public and private partners, who will then begin the work of delivering affordable, I think that's really important, affordable, accessible, reliable, high-speed broadband to the last mile. That is what we're waiting on. That is what is still lacking right now. Many states are going through this exact speed test, and Kentucky has actually surpassed many of them with our participation, but we want to get as many people to participate as we can, so we extended the deadline to March 1st. And so the sooner you can help us get the word out about speedtest.ky.gov, the sooner we will be able to capture the information we need to build the best broadband infrastructure across Kentucky. And so I wanted to come on and share that with you today. And if you have any questions, obviously you can reach out, but our goal is to make sure that this broadband is not just an integral part of our infrastructure, but a right for every Kentucky child so that we can close that digital divide and ensure that our kids are treated equitably and have equitable opportunity, especially when it comes to education. So speedtest.ky.gov, help us get out the word in your communities, and I appreciate it so much.
Thanks, Lieutenant Governor. It's always great to have you with us, and thanks for letting us know about this initiative, and we'll do our best to spread the word with you. Let's turn to Tony Collins-Tapman, our Chief Communications Officer, for some quick communications updates. Go ahead, Tony, take it away.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Great. So just real quick, I wanted to remind you all, and I can't remember if we mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but just to make sure you all are mentioning this in your communities about our commissioners listening tour that'll be coming up April 6th through the May 6th. These are going to be held 9 sessions virtually across the state. We are doing these kind of in conjunction with the cooperative regions, and then also one in Louisville, but it really does not matter since these are virtual, which one that you attend or that you ask your folks in the community to attend. This is really, these listening tours are going to be really important for us as we collect really what the Commonwealth's long-term aspirations are for K-12 education across the state. So I went ahead and I put the pre-registration. We are trying to gather as many, figure out how much interest is needed for each of the slots. We are going to be doing student-led breakout rooms via Zoom. They're in the evening time, and lots of information is available on our website. And those are the dates right there for each area in the state. The next thing I wanted to mention was that the David Karam Award nominations are open. And again, we're receiving lots of nominations, but I want to make sure that you are aware of that too. If you know of somebody who, policymaker, education citizen, leader who has made notable statewide contributions to the improvement of our education system. You can submit those through March 17th, and I put the link there online. And again, all of this information is going to be in the PowerPoint that you will receive, and you can always get all of this information on the KDE Communications site. Also, I'm very excited to announce that we just opened the applications for the 2021-22 Commissioner Student Advisory Council. This is a hot seat. We already have 200 applications for about 14 spots on the Student Advisory Council. But I want to make sure that you all are aware that, we're seeking as many applications as possible because it is while it is competitive, we are seeking students from across the state as they are aligned with the Supreme Court districts. And we want to make sure that there is great representative from across every county across the state. I also wanted to pass along some information from Robin Kinney's office on ESSER 2 assurances, spending plan, and FAQs. Robin, I don't know if you wanted to join me on this, or I can just go ahead and go over the bullet points for you.
Hey, Tony, I'll join for just a minute. We are happy to announce that we have completed the ESSER 2 assurances and spending plan. They'll be uploaded today and will be in GMAP tomorrow. We did put some details in the Commissioner's Money message of yesterday. Within that ESSER 2 assurance, there's also some information in there about the state set-aside opt-in that we had talked about briefly on the last Superintendent's Webcast. We have nailed down that it will be based upon $75 per pupil, and that is based upon the ADA from your district election under Senate Bill 177, so either that 1819 or 1920 selection. We've also posted the ESSER 2 FAQs out there. Thank you for all the questions that have been sent in already. And we're happy to continue to up that ESSER 2 FAQ as we roll along. I do want to point out in the ESSER 2 assurance document that you'll see posted in GMAP, you'll see within the state set-aside opt-in section, there's a section that's highlighted in there for you to make that election. And within that election, there is a reference to the federal funding matrix. We had a lot of questions, of course, and understandably about what is deemed a direct service for purposes of accessing this pot of money. And so if you'll look at the federal funding matrix that is included in the assurance, there's a link to that. And if you don't see that immediately, you can look at on our federal grants page. And on that, look under ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 allocation. Then click on CRRSA ESSER 2, and you'll see a column that says 85% direct services, and it'll say yes or no in that column. So we thought this might be the easiest way for people to determine if a direct service would be counted toward that 85%. So we've shared, please share that with your finance officers. Of course, they're always interested in knowing that, but go out to the federal grants funding matrix and look for the direct services, 85% direct services column, and you'll see yeses and nos in that column to help you all make those determinations on direct service. Thank you so much, Tony, and I'll give it back to you.
All right, thank you, Robin. I appreciate it. And I believe that wraps up my presentation. And I will toss it over to Kelly Foster.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just have a couple of slides that I want to share with you guys. This is the cover of the KDE COVID-19 Guidance 2.0, and want to talk to you just a little bit about this guidance document and show you where you can find it on the web. As Dr. Glass mentioned earlier, it's quite large. This document has every piece of guidance that we released since last May and through January of 2021. So there's not new guidance in there. There were not any substantial changes made in that guidance document. We just put everything in one place where you could search for it rather than having to go through the individual documents on the web. So just keep that in mind when you look at this document. And I'm going to share my screen, Tony, just for a second. Let's see. Okay, I think you can see the KDE COVID-19 webpage. Did that pop up?
Yes.
Okay, like great. So if you'll go to the reopening tab there, we have made some changes here, and I want to walk you through those quickly. Now, when you click on, well, this is actually a new tab, KDE COVID-19 Guidance 2.0. When you click on that, everything that has been there since May of last year is now in that 132-page manual. So you won't see all those individual documents. We'll give it here just a second and see if it'll open up. Okay, so you used to see like probably 50 documents here. Now, right at the top, you have the KDE COVID-19 Guidance 2.0 that was released on February 22nd. So any document that we put together leading up to February 1 of 2021 can now be found in this one link. Then you have the Healthy at Schools document right below that. That was most recently updated on December the 7th. And then any guidance that we have released recently around ESSER 2, around student travel, around testing, around post-vaccination is all right here, anything since February 1st. And then we also pulled up underneath this the ESSER 1 and the GEAR 1 guidance. So anything that's financial is here. Anything that's been released since February 1 of 2021 is here. Everything else is in your KDE COVID-19 guidance document. And that's all I have today, Tony. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I think then we will toss it over to our superintendents. I guess, Jason, if you'd like to do a introduction.
I think we've got Bo on next from KTRS.
Oh, right. Yes, I apologize. Yes, we do have Bo from KTRS. And I did want to just briefly mention to our superintendents, if you have questions, to submit those via the Google form, which should be in your calendar invite. I will go ahead and submit that. I know I've had a couple people text me asking what the Google or how to submit questions. We are using the Google form on that. It should be in your calendar invite, but I'll go ahead and shoot an email out to you all right now with the current, with the Google form so you can submit your questions that way. And yes, go ahead, Bo Barnes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting Teachers Retirement System to be part of your webcast this afternoon. I'm here today because I've been asked by the department, we were asked by the department to look into the use of retired and retiring teachers to help in the classroom, to help with the lost learning that we're seeing during the pandemic. And we are certainly glad to do that. We're glad to do that. And retired and retiring teachers certainly can be used in the classroom, but there are limitations, okay? And those limitations begin with federal law. Teachers Retirement System, or TRS, is a qualified plan under Section 401A of the Internal Revenue Code And what that means as a qualified plan is that our teachers can make their retirement contributions to TRS on a tax-deferred basis, which is a great tax advantage because that provides them with more take-home pay in their paycheck. So we spend a lot of time and effort trying to ensure that we are compliant with federal tax law and do not run afoul with its requirements. One of the most important things that the federal tax law looks to and wants is that for there to be a bona fide retirement, is what they'll call it. And that means that someone, when they're retiring, they are really retiring, okay, without really intending to come back. And the number one prohibition that the IRS will have in regard to retirement situations is there can be no prearranged agreement between a retiring employee, not just teachers, this is any kind of retirement, between a retiring employee and the employer for that retiring employee to return to work after retirement, okay? No prearranged agreement. So that brings us down to sort of state law, and that's why, for example, in state law, we have those mandatory breaks in service, okay? If you're going back to the same district on a full-time basis, there's a 12-month break in service. If you're going back to work for the same district on a part-time basis or for a different district on a full or part-time basis, it's a 3-month break. And most pension systems across the country have these breaks in service to try to show the IRS that in good faith, we really are requiring bona fide retirements as you want for us to remain a qualified plan. So we have federal law, and then we have that federal law driving state law. So those are the things that, you know, are the limitations, and it's all driven on the federal level. The first question that we were asked by the department was, has the federal government enacted any legislation or any rulemaking that would provide any easing of these return to work post-retirement limitations in response to the pandemic? And unfortunately, they have not. There was no assistance available on the federal level to provide any such help. So we further met with our outside tax counsels. We explored opportunities for executive orders or legislation. Those are very limited too. Executive orders, while they can get us around the prohibition against against breaks in service, it only works if there's an executive order and no existing retired teacher knows there's going to be an executive order allowing them to return to the classroom immediately. And the IRS's thought process there is that if that executive order comes out in response to a pandemic and nobody knows about it, then there's not really a prearranged agreement for that teacher who's getting ready to retire, you know, for them to return to work immediately. So that's a serious issue with using an executive order. And legislation, of course, you can't do legislation because everybody's going to know it's, you know, there's going to be a prearranged agreement. It's out there, it's public. So there's issues, you know, trying to work around the IRS requirements. In discussing this with the department, one of the ideas that they had and we were exploring, you know, is trying to use retirement as an incentive to help keep retiring teachers in the classroom through the summer, you know, for summer school. And what does that mean? You know, how does that, you know, is retirement a good incentive? And it really, really depends on the retiring teacher. And the reason is for summer school, you know, it's kind of unusual. You know, school districts have a unique kind of work calendar. You have the regular school calendar. Those days all get summer credit. And then you have summer school, which the districts report to us not as days work, but just as compensation earned, like extra earnings. So that's how that comes into us. So that's kind of unique. And those extra earnings, we do take retirement contributions on those for inclusion for retirement calculation purposes. But we have, you know, this other issue. We have a statute. It's an we call it anti-spiking. It's not really anti-spiking, which is it's actuarial smoothing of increases in compensation earned in the last 3 years prior to retirement. You know, now if somebody gets an increase in compensation for the last 4 years prior to retirement for a full 4 years, then that smoothing doesn't occur. So that if you have a percentage increase in your compensation, your total compensation that exceeds the greatest percentage rank and step increase on any one rank and step of the certified salary schedule, and you have that increase for a full 4 years, there's no problem. It's an exception to the smoothing statute. You're outside of the timeline. But if you have that in the last year or last 2 years or even the last 3 years or 3.5 years, then there is an issue. So that compensation is reduced for retirement calculation purposes back to that greatest percentage rank and step on the certified salary schedule. So that means for our members, what that means for our retiring teachers, having them, encouraging them to teach through the schools year, through the summer school, and delay retirement, effective delaying retirement. Some of those teachers, many, I don't know how many, but would be caught by the application of the actuarial smoothing, the anti-spiking, and they wouldn't be able to use any or very little of those earnings in summer school. So those folks, you know, the enticement from a retirement perspective is not going to be a lot. It might be $10 a month to their monthly retirement check if they delay retirement until it'll be August 1st, okay? Because they would need to get 1 day of the new school year in to have service credit to tie this earnings, which otherwise, summer earnings, which otherwise would have 0 days to tie them to. So it's a little tricky, but it can be done. Now, for our teachers who've been doing summer school all along, they've been doing it for a full 4 years, they might still see some reduction if we increase those summer school earnings, those daily rates during the summer. But it can still be a pretty nice boost, you know, to their retirement. It could be maybe $200 a month more in retirement. Now, that's a little more attractive. That's more of an incentive for our retiring teachers, maybe to delay retirement. And since we don't know, you know, who is and who isn't, going to be the beneficiary of delaying their retirement, I guess what we would say is if the districts have certain teachers that they are really interested in encouraging them to delay retirement, they ought to contact us, and we'd be more than happy, you know, to look at their account, look at their circumstances, and see if for them, they would be in the group that's closer to $200 a month increase, or maybe more in retirement, or they're going to be someone who's a little bit more de minimis in the $10 per month range, and probably that's not going to be enough to attract those folks to hang around in summer school, during summer school, and delay their retirement. For those folks, probably, I would think that the more attractive incentive would just be the compensation that can be offered to those folks during summer school to encourage them to delay retirement and, you know, just maybe add a little bit more to their savings. But that's where we are. That's after looking at this, and again, we were glad to do this and look for any opportunity we could to assist the districts with this issue. And certainly we understand the issue and how dire it is. You know, I have a son that's doing virtual learning today, so in public school at 2nd Street here in Frankfurt. So certainly understand the issue and the difficulties, but that's what we shared with the department, our most recent meeting. And certainly if there's any questions about that now, if that's appropriate, or if there's follow-up questions in writing, or any other ideas that anyone on this webcast would like for us to explore, we are certainly more than willing to do that.
Thanks, Bo. Are you able to stay with us until the end to answer questions that superintendents have?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thanks so much for staying around. We'll shift now to our panel of superintendents. We've got a really tremendous group of superintendents. They were chosen because I've had the opportunity to interact with all of them. I've been really impressed by them, and we gave some thought to districts around the state where that were representative of different kinds of communities. So really excited about hearing what these folks have to say and what some of their thinking is around the ESSER II plans for their districts. We're going to start with Rob Clayton in Warren County. Rob, are you ready to go?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Glass. I think I've got everything squared away here. Let me begin by first thanking you for the opportunity. And I know I share the same sentiment as our colleagues across the state. We're all trying to learn from one another. I think the big picture here for us here in Warren County is the fact that we've tried to implement processes that are not only research driven and proven, but also provide options for all of our families. I've invited Melissa Stefanski, our Chief Academic Officer, to share just a brief overview. I know our time is limited, and she and her staff really have done the bulk of the heavy lifting, and she'll be in a better position to perhaps address some specific questions as well. I do want to share that we've provided our email addresses because we do have several documents on here that we're certainly willing to share with anyone. I think we all would agree when it comes to ensuring the safety of our students and staff, including teaching and learning, that nothing is proprietary. So we're more than willing to share any of those documents, and just feel free to reach out. Without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Melissa Stefanski, our Chief Academic Officer, and let her take you through what our process looks like right now. And just like many of you, it is a work in progress, and she'll be able to share a few of those highlights. Melissa?
Thank you, Mr. Clayton, and thanks to everyone for inviting me to be part of this today. Tony, we can move on to the next slide there. So in Warren County, one of the things that we are looking at using our funding for is, of course, to support student learning and our teachers and schools. Back in November, on this slide, you will see where we started. This 5-prong approach is a document that shows different steps that we took to support students who may need to come into the building, a little more than distance learning when we did our hybrid model. We did support with some transportation. We offered Friday and Saturday school help. We've offered winter term and a spring break term, and incorporated a district dropout prevention position, and then also district accountability meetings. And we're getting a lot of good response from our district accountability meetings, where we bring students and their parents in if they are struggling, and try to problem solve and get a plan in place so that they can be successful, whether it's early primary all the way to our seniors. So this document is just several ideas that we have been implementing since November. And if anyone has any questions about those or needs any of the documents, please feel free to reach out to us. We're glad to share anything. The next document on this slide that you'll see is our next step. This is our timeline of response to interrupted learning. One of the things in Warren County we want to move away from is learning gap. We know that there are learning gaps, but we want to specifically respond to the interrupted learning that we know that our students have encountered. We started this about a month ago, back at the beginning of February. Our instructional team met and started to discuss concerns that we were hearing and things that we were seeing. We moved on into the next step, which was to bring our principals on in leveled meetings. This is something we do frequently in our district, and so this is an ongoing process that will continue throughout this next 18 to 24 months as we address the response to interrupted learning. And in those meetings, we're talking about what will it take for us to open school 4 days a week to all of our students who want to come back in person. This document that is linked here also shows that we've talked about summer school, how we're going to do credit recovery, all of those things. The next step on that will be to get stakeholder input, and then we're going to steep this in research. We are coming with a lot of interviews with our stakeholders, parents, students, teachers. We really want to pull our Friskies in because we know they have seen some of the hardships that our students have gone through and our families, and so we want to get a very big view of what we're facing. And then we're going to steep that in research. What are historical situations showing us is best practice, and then what do current education professionals telling us is best practice? And we're going to marry the two and come up with endorsements that our schools can choose from. The next document on this slide, this is a position statement on retention. We know one of the things that we're facing is schools either questioning retention or families questioning retention. And this is a statement that we've had for a while. When you click on this document, you would see We have a retention statement in so much as how it relates to English learners, and then also just in general, the aspect of retention. And it also includes the research. We often say that research doesn't support. We wanted to be able to have that research at our fingertips, and so it is part of this document as well. And then the last document on this slide that you are more than welcome to have is Learning After the Crisis. This is that research we were talking that I was talking about in the timeline of response to interrupted learning. And we are just putting all the research in one space so that we can get to it easily. It's this has different articles about different disasters and how education came back after them. And it also is, we're starting to add Hattie's work, Reeves' work, those kinds of things to allow us to be able to say what needs to be said, but back it with research. Tony, any of these documents that you want, if you don't have access to, you can email me and I'll be glad to share them with anyone. We want to work smarter, not harder. The next document, addressing failing needs. Well, when we address failing needs, we have to define what is failing. And when we look at Reeves, he's talking about, is that no participation or is that a proficiency level? We need to look at proficiency level. We need to know, are they failing because they haven't mastered content and skills? So we have to look at what are some options that we can use this funding for, and we have to think outside the box. Flexible hours, sometimes evening is better for students, and so we have to look at those things. We have students who are helping support their families. Looking at essential skills, doing pre-tests. We can't just say there's a learning gap, they're behind their peers. Well, they've been through a pandemic. So we need to pre-assess and we need to determine where they are and move them forward, filling in the potholes where they are, but not taking everyone back and doing remediation across the board. We're talking about summer school academies. We want to cloak these in fun and make them more camp-like so our students want to come and they want to learn. We've talked about enrichment. Patty Schaefer from Union County, one of her great ideas is that she's going to align her summer enrichment with athletic camps. And so if you get the kids there for an athletic camp, then you can do some summer enrichment as well. And then we've talked about virtual tours. So just thinking outside the box. And in Warren County, if you have great ideas to share, please do, because we love to take ideas from others too. And then our last slide there, Tony. Just some things that we've talked about in relation to retention that, just making sure that if we ever get to that point that we talk about that we're documenting everything in Infinite Campus. We've got to understand that students with IEPs, retention is not an art decision. We have to consider the whole child. Our children have been through a pandemic, so we have to address the social emotional learning. Retaining a student has that effect on students as well, the social emotional, and so we have to get past it's just being academics. And our children have been through pandemic, so we're compiling things. And then if we decide that a kindergartner needs to repeat, this was Patricia Sheffer's idea, as well as doing a combined class, because that does affect funding. Because we are not fully funded for kindergarten. So those are just some things to be thinking about in relation to monies and how we can best use them to support students, how we can support our teachers, and how we can make the best of the situation that we're in.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. And I will just close with this, Dr. Glass and colleagues. The fortunate thing that we have found throughout this entire process is we've been able to keep our focus really on our human capital. I think we all know that that's the key piece, the key ingredient to moving the needle. By no stretch of the imagination, if we figured this out, we don't have a silver bullet. But what we have tried to do is keep the focus on the instructional capacity of our high-level employees, if you will, and then trying to develop processes where we can lean on them, utilize them to help us make a difference in those students that have experienced significant challenges during this interrupted learning. So thank you all.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Melissa. Great presentation. And for the documents that Melissa was referencing, if you look in the PowerPoint, they're linked into that. So you can click on those and see the great work that is going on in Warren County. Thanks for sharing your plans with us, and we're going to fly from Bowling Green all the way over to near the West Virginia and Virginia state lines. And we've got David Trimble on from Pikeville Independent. David, come on and tell us what you're thinking about in Pikeville.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Glass. We appreciate you and your team allowing us the opportunity to present for just a few minutes. Anyone who knows me knows I tend to not be brief, so I've got a timer set. I will be finished in 7 minutes. I'll do my best. I was very happy to hear that Rob and Melissa said that sharing ideas was important, because I actually had the opportunity in new superintendent training to hear them present in an in-depth manner many of their ideas last week, and we have considered them greatly. Administratively here in this district, many of the things that they've presented, and so we appreciate that, and we appreciate their willingness to share those last week and again today. So here in Pikeville Independent, of course, we're not a large district. There's about 1,160 students in our district, and we are in a community that is greatly blessed with folks who value education greatly. And so a lot of what we look at as we consider things from an administrative standpoint is twofold, which is one, allowing and encouraging community participation, and two, making sure that we receive input from all of our stakeholders in the process. And so we have what we will be presenting to you today is as I think most people will present, is a skeleton view of where we expect things to go as we are going to get input. One of the things that was mentioned last week by the folks at Warren County is they're doing interviews. We've talked surveys a lot, and we've done a lot of surveys this year, but we are actually looking at pods of people who represent all the different stakeholder groups and all of our different families and demographically, in working to have some interviews and to try to have some open conversation, open dialogue about where they feel their child or where our youth service center feels that we have some areas where we need to take a look as far as struggles that have occurred during this particular time. And so as we look through it, I've gone with a very basic PowerPoint because I tend to get wordy if I don't, but we're just got on the next slide, we have about 4 blocks of ideas that we really are placing our focus around. And so this has been administratively where we go now is we go to those groups. We know that our teachers, we are very blessed in this district, as each of you are, to have some amazing teachers and amazing members of our team in every role. And so we want to open up the conversation and take ideas and then build upon that. And so we probably won't share anything that's new to you, but hopefully just help us all think together. We've included intervention and enrichment together. I think the really important thing that we want to focus on is this. Any loss that's occurred during this time is not only for students who maybe have low grades. And it was mentioned a little bit, Melissa mentioned it just a moment ago. But instead, every student has in some way lost some time, and we're going to need to continue to help bring them forward. And so as we think about intervention and enrichment, we think about the fact that we may have students who are well above grade level, as we do have students in this district, but still maybe are not on the trajectory where they were prior to this pandemic. And so we think about providing enriching activities over the summer and also throughout the school year to help bring students, no matter where that loss may be, whether it's at the highest performing level for students or for students who haven't performed so well, that we provide those opportunities. So I started with enrichment to say that we have some great community partners that will help us to provide additional support for students who've had success, but maybe had some learning loss there during that time, and we can see that through our data that we have available to us. From an intervention standpoint, we've looked at, we're really focusing on some daytime ESS, and of course that's not coming out, that particular is not coming out of ESSER 2, but we know that as we move forward into 2023, that if that's necessary, that's what we will do in order to be able to provide some additional assistance to those students. So we're looking not only in summer, but also day to day, just as each of you are. From a summer standpoint, we've really had some interesting conversation. Our high school folks, I feel very strongly that our greatest success is going to be at the end of the school year, that we will be able to focus our resources from the secondary level more in the June time period. Our elementary folks are very insistent that they would prefer more of a kickstart, jump start to the school year. And so that's really great for us because that gives us our resources of our district throughout the entire summer. And so we were excited to hear that those two time periods might be different, and we understand that each age level of kid learns differently. And so just as was mentioned, we're not looking at a traditional summer school, and we know that a lot of summer school, and here a lot of that has transitioned to online. We're looking at coming back to a more face-to-face approach. We know our kids need that, and we know our kids have missed that in a lot of cases this year. And so we will look at summer academies. We will obviously not just focus on students who need credit recovery, but also students who, based upon our data, we know we need to assist them in coming forward based upon some loss that they had. So we've looked at that at both levels. Again, I think some great ideas, and I shared with some folks in our new superintendent cohort the other day that this is going to have to be, it's going to have to involve even more than ever a fun learning environment as kids who have already had a lot of struggle give up summertime to come in and grow and to learn extensively. And so we are looking at this being a very creative, awesome opportunity for kids to learn in. And then we will work together both vertically and within our teams to assure that we have success in identifying the students who need that most. One of the other places we're really looking at is in our intervention with reading and maybe some reading recovery, adding some additional opportunity there. And so we've looked there in the intervention area. And the one other thing, and then I'm going to move off of this because I think I'm at 6 minutes and 15 seconds, is hopefully within the intervention, we are considering maybe doing some parent academies. What we know is that our parents have learned more than ever that maybe at times they're not as equipped as they would like to be with working with their children at home, with being able to provide that additional assistance when their child is working on activities at home. And so we are looking especially K-8 at some possible university parent academies to help with maybe some strategies and teaching some different things. And so that's kind of our intervention focus. Mental health and social emotional well-being. We have added additional opportunity with school psychologists, and we have a tremendous school psychologist, and we've used a lot of the mental health funding for that. But we're going to extend that throughout the summer. We know that maybe there haven't been as many opportunities because of students not being in school, and so we're going to provide transportation, provide those additional opportunities. We're going to continue our food options and things such as that to make sure that we're also laying eyes on our kids over the summer if they're not in our buildings and able to have conversations with them and assure that we're providing for their needs. The last piece, just really quickly, and this goes back to direct services a little bit. We are not a one-to-one district, and we haven't really focused on that. We have a lot of students with devices, but we do want to continue to provide additional resources to our students from a technology standpoint. We do know that maybe with direct services, after the conversation last week, that may not fall under that category, but we also know that might be a significant need for us to provide additional resources from a technology standpoint. And if that's the case, we're just going to have to weigh those options. But we do look at adding some additional technology there, and also updating our resources that are in our classrooms. Literacy was due up to get new resources anyway, maybe using this as a way to provide that additional technology. So the next slide is a very simple one that just kind of is our focus moving forward. The surveys and the interviews, and then our continued evaluation of data to communicate our plans and our goals, and to make sure that everyone in our community knows these are the days that this is available, that these are the opportunities that are available, and to make sure that we provide the access, the transportation, the technology that we need to make all of these things be impactful for our students. And then I think there's three things. We either proceed with the things that we're doing now and we make them better every day by improving upon them, or we are going to implement new things moving forward all the way through to 2023 and beyond. So that's a really quick, hopefully a little bit beneficial of where we are right now.
Thanks so much, David. Appreciate all the thought you put into putting this together. We're going to go from Pikeville Right to the middle of the state now, Fayette County Public Schools, home of the Wildcats. And we've got not a brand new superintendent here. We have Marlene Helm on, the interim superintendent. Marlene, welcome. Marlene and Mindy Mills, the Associate Director of Title I at Fayette County, are going to talk a little bit about their Summer Ignite program. But just Marlene, on a quick personal note, we know that you came into this role in a very difficult time, a difficult circumstance, and we've all appreciated the grace at which you've managed that. And we look forward to hearing about your summer programs.
Thank you so much. We're appreciative of the opportunity to share some of our initial thinking and ideas about the ESSER II funds. If you remember, Jim Collins, in his #1 bestseller about 20 years ago, urged organizations to have a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. I would say our BHAG is to use these once-in-a-lifetime funds to really make a difference, to have a very real and recognizable impact on the lives of our students, especially those who were supremely negatively impacted by the pandemic. A BHAG calls for out-of-the-box, awe-inspiring ideas and thinking, and to that end, we are still very early in the process of identifying, quantifying, and affirming. We knew that BHAG thinking and planning would take time, and to some extent, we had at least an immediate need, a fire, if you will, that needed to be addressed. And that is how to help our students to catch up, pull up, step up, and get fired up, to gain and regain that which they missed during this past year, that which they didn't quite grasp on their own or needed more one-on-one assistance to master and internalize. And so we decided to focus on summer school. I know you're probably thinking, summer school, that's not a BHAG, but we're not talking about our grandmother's summer school, but one that's set to ignite and fan the flames of learning. A summer school that gets the participants to not focus so much on what, when, how, and where, but the why. Why? So that your future plans, your dreams, the desires can be met without fear or hesitation. So that grades that that each student knows they are capable of achieving and will need for that special next step can be achieved. A summer school that students will clamor for and be excited to add to their summer plans. We intend to ignite them with enthusiasm. And to share this program, I'd like to introduce to you Mindy Mills, who is our Associate Director of Title I, who has been the lead catalyst for this particular initiative. Mindy?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Helm, and for KDE for giving us the opportunity this afternoon to share our plans for Summer Ignite. And Dr. Helm's already given you our why of we're doing this, and we knew it was an immediate need, just like others of you in the state have realized that you would need something for the summer. So we thought this afternoon we would kind of go to the next step and talk with you real quickly or briefly about how we are planning and how we are rolling this out in a district our size, which we've never had anything to this magnitude in the summer before. So Tony, if you can go on to the next slide for us. Oops, I think we got out of order there. There we go. So sticking with our Summer Ignite theme, we first started by gathering some kindling. And how did we get the fire started? Back on January 5th, we brought together a cross-functional planning committee that included principals, district leaders, our transportation and food service directors, student support personnel, EL staff, parent representatives, and also community partners together to begin the planning for this. As we moved through to the discussions, the next step was the principals that were on the committee presented to their principal cadre groups and gained feedback. And we took that feedback to go back to the committee and determine our district parameters. For a district our size, we decided that we had to have some parameters, and those parameters basically are the dates and the times. And that makes it more feasible for our transportation, more feasible for our food service, more feasible for the PR, so that, you know, one school is not having it these dates and another school is having it at different dates. So we did decide on those parameters. And we have chosen to do 3 sessions. We're doing one 14-day session in June, taking a little break and coming back in July with an additional 14-day session. And then the 3rd session will be that transition session that will be the last week of July, which will be for incoming kindergartners, incoming 6th graders, and incoming 9th graders as they make transitions to their new buildings. We were able to share all those plans and those parameters with our school leaders at our district leadership team meeting. And their first step for each school was to identify a Summer Ignite coordinator, who is the person in each school who's going to do most of the heavy lifting and the planning and the preparation for this. And we had our first coordinators meeting last week. So then we moved on to sending some smoke signals. So Tony, you can move forward. So our smoke signals are how are we ensuring buy-in and support. Our first way is this week we're kicking off a family survey. Our partners with UK helped us design that survey, and we'll be asking families questions such as, what do you think your student needs in the summertime? What are their social emotional needs? And then how would you like to see your students engaged in the summer as well? We're also going to be conducting some focus groups again with UK, and our 16th district PTA is going to be running those focus groups for families. Just another way to get feedback that will assist our schools in planning the needs for their building and for their students. We're really, really excited. We recently had a meeting with over 40 community partners. They're partnering with us to plan our Summer Ignite and to plan other opportunities throughout Lexington and Fayette County. A lot of those community partners will be offering some enrichment in our buildings. They'll be hopefully giving some opportunities for some field trips. And as well as we're wanting to put together just a complete menu of services of everything that's offered in Lexington and Fayette County that families would have the option to choose from. As we move forward, we know that we've got to figure out a way to kind of fan the flames. And we're looking at how we're going to recruit staff. Tony, you can move forward for me. As many of you have already mentioned, and we talk about that's going to be a huge need for us and the staff to work during the summertime, to work our Summer Ignite. We are excited to say that just last night at our Board of Education meeting, our board improved increasing the stipend rate for our certified teachers for Summer Ignite, and they will be paid equivalent to their hourly rate, which for most of our folks is a substantial increase over just our regular stipend policy that we have. We're encouraging schools to have a lot of flexibility, to job share, to co-teach. Teachers may teach one session, they may teach 2, or they may choose to teach all 3. And also maybe even alternating days. Just be creative and to meet the needs of your students. We're going to be surveying all of our certified substitutes to determine their interest. And again, we are very fortunate to be in Wildcat country, and so we have a tremendous partnership with UK. And they are reaching out to all of their pre-service teachers and encouraging them to apply for substitutes in the summer so that we can have additional hands on deck. And they are also working with EPSB to figure out a way for those pre-service teachers to be able to count some observation hours and maybe even some practicum hours as well. Another step, it's no secret in the news that Fayette County has a little bit of a bus driver shortage right now, probably like a lot of you. But we are looking at a plan, hopefully, to offer some full-time positions for our bus drivers in the summer, because this will be a massive undertaking with transportation and those type things to make it all happen. So then we're passing the torch. A lot of the initial planning and things are moving on to each school at this point. We are going to allow each school to have the autonomy to design their plan for summer within the parameters that the district sets of the dates and times and so forth. And our intention is that every building, every special program in Fayette County will participate and have Summer Ignite for all 3 sessions. So our schools are developing a plan or proposal. They're doing a needs assessment to look at their student needs, identifying students to participate. They're going to describe and really think about how they're going to engage students. Like Mr. Trimble said, we do not in any way want this to be same old summer school. We do want to ignite that love of learning and for it to be fun and engaging for them. Our schools are going to be looking at ways that they can offer enrichment during their summertime and how they're going to involve community partners. And their proposal will include their staffing needs. We're encouraging them to think outside the box. I had a school this week ask me, can my art teacher teach one day and my PE teacher teach the next for, some enrichment type that way? I said, I love that idea. That's awesome. Think outside the box and be creative. We would love to have some interventionists on staff in the summer, maybe to kick off some reading recovery services for our students. And then part of the funding as well will go towards some resources and materials that may be needed in the summertime, as well as we're floating around the idea of, what can we provide for our students to take home as well? Lots of books. We'd like to fill their backpacks up throughout the summer and moving forward. As part of our ESSER funding plan, we are planning something similar for the following summer as well. So Summer Ignite, we'll see how it goes, part 1, and move towards to part 2 in the summer of 2022. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. As you know, Fayette County just yesterday began returning our scholars back to in-person learning, starting with our youngest at K2. They are returning under a plan that was developed under the wise counsel and guidance of our beloved Superintendent Manny Kalk, who Commissioner Glass mentioned we lost in December. Manny believed in the power and effectiveness of our school employees to not only reach, but teach with excellence. Next slide, please, Tony. So to ensure that each and every student had the opportunity to become which they imagined, his philosophy was that victory is in the classroom. And so the 3 R's, or R to the 3rd power, was developed as the plan to help us right our pandemic hit ship. First, he knew that we would need to step up and re-envision, to gather ideas from all angles and corners of the community. What else do our students need and want to be the successful adults of the future? And then to reimagine the how. We know the virtual platform, and I think we can all agree, is here to stay. So how do we use it to reimagine how students access school and the learning tools, the teaching prowess of our amazing teachers and other staff, the lessons, the information they're going to need, not just for the next grade, but for life? One of the ideas that we are floating is something called a partner hub. Manny called everyone he met partner, because he truly believed that equipping students with that which they need to be successful and to achieve their destiny was only going to be possible through partnerships with home, school, and community. We currently have a STEM vehicle that's a retrofitted bus that can go into any neighborhood and provide students with real-time opportunities to experience and do STEM activities that are hands-on, engaging, exploratory, and high interest. We are envisioning partner hubs that would be retrofitted vehicles or buses that would allow us to take what students need into their communities rather than always compelling them to come back to the schoolhouse, for which some of the students are not necessarily very positive about. So we think this would be another way to really increase our partnership. And finally, to renew. COVID-19 didn't happen to us. We think that it happened for us. We want to take this sense of urgency and excitement and look for ways to engage our board and community to not only look for a new superintendent, but to help dream our BHAG and to drive this transformational opportunity. Thank you so much for allowing us to share our initial thoughts about our ESSER II use of funds.
Thanks, Marlene, and thanks, Mindy. Wow, really excited to hear about what you have planned for Fayette County. Let's go south on I-75 now to Mount Vernon, beautiful Rock Castle County, and we have Carrie on to talk about what their plans are. Carrie, take it away.
Carrie, I think you might be on mute.
Thank you, Tony.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Dr. Glass. We really appreciate the opportunity to share the thoughts and ideas that Rockcastle County Schools is exploring to address this learning loss. Our first part of our plan is how we can actually address school reentry. Tony, if you want to move that slide forward. So we're looking at coming back to school 4 days a week in person. We know that having our students in the classroom offers them the best opportunity to receive the type of learning that we intend to deliver to them. We're looking at doing that at the middle of March, perhaps March 15th, March 22nd. But in addition to that, we know that we're going to have students that are still on our virtual program, which in Rockcastle County we call My Rock Online. And those are the students that we feel that at this fourth quarter of this school year that we really need to target. So we're going to be providing some online student support for those students at each school. We're looking at perhaps doing that 2 hours each day and providing some intensive intervention time for them, some tutoring for those students that perhaps have fallen behind during this virtual period. In addition to that, we would like to open up a centralized tutoring center, and this will focus on our middle and high school students 2 days a week, and looking at some very flexible hours for that. In the evening time, we know that we have lots of students that are working, and so how can we address their needs? So we're going to be using some survey data to figure out which time would be best for our students and how we can best serve them. And our Fridays, we are using those currently for targeted academic groups. We're also going to add in some social emotional learning during that time, and also pulling in our clubs. Our middle and high school clubs have really missed out on key opportunities to connect with students and to have relationships with students. So we want to pull those clubs back in and have club days on our Fridays as well. We have plans for extended school services, offering those through April and May. And we want to focus on tutoring, but also have an enrichment portion of that. And also, again, pulling in our clubs, anything that we can do to re-envision how we can get our students back on campus. I think that this is our real opportunity for us to resell school to our Rockcastle County students. So we have to be very broad, and we have to re-envision what can we do to get our students back to us. Our summer school, again, as many people have already spoken and addressed, we're going to use our summer school in a very camp type feel. We're going to call it Camp Rock. We will focus on grade level standards, using that time in the morning to really focus on core educational standards, and then using our afternoon time for enrichment activities. And also, we are going to be using our high school students to work with our elementary and middle school students to develop a student mentoring program. And something that's just might be a tad bit different than what we've discussed so far is we're looking at doing our summer school for June and July, but meeting 2 days a week instead of doing week-long camps. As a former elementary teacher, I've witnessed that summer slide and how important it is to try to correct that. So we feel like if we can have kids on our campus 2 days a week, then we can do a better job of using our time wisely. At the high school level, that will look different. At the high school level, we're going to look at week-long learning labs. That at some point that will be geared towards credit recovery, but we're also going to survey our students to try to appeal to their needs. Who better to ask but our students? So what can we offer you that will get you to come to summer school? We want to really focus on being creative and utilizing our ATC, our CTE courses, perhaps offering week-long business camps, welding camps, automotive camps, anything we can do to get our students back in our buildings, back to us, because when they're with us, then we can really start to address those social emotional learning needs that we all know that are so apparent right now. Tony, if you'll advance that. In looking at at professional learning, we all know that access to stronger instruction is the key to closing gaps. And we've all been used to addressing gaps our entire career. This is just more pronounced. So we want to really focus on what we already know. And we already know that we have to teach on grade level standards, and we have to focus on high yield teaching strategies. So we want to go back with our teachers and our principals and readdress that and really bring everybody back to the middle, to a balance of what do we know works. So we're going to be reevaluating our curriculum and pacing guides and really trying to focus on the intentional use of spiral reviews. We know that research shows that that's very beneficial in covering and meeting learning gaps. So we want to focus on that. And then using our professional learning communities to reinforce the PDSA model and also those use of high yield instructional strategies. We all know that the key to great teaching is also having a great instructional leader. So we're going to partner with the Elgin Foundation to work with our principals to utilize training on instructional leadership, and then pulling in some Kagan work for cooperative learning, and also doing some work with Advanced Kentucky at our middle and high school level, which will be new to Rockcastle County Schools in the upcoming school year. And then we will also continue to focus on digital learning training. Those good strategies for remote learning. But one area that we really want to focus on is relationship building, and how do you do that when a student is remote? I think that, as we all know, across the whole state has been very difficult for us. So we're going to try to spend some time on focusing on that and building those relationships, which is key. And again, teacher stipends will be paid for participation for that work. Tony, if you want to move forward. Rockcastle County Schools was lucky enough this year to use some of our previous funding to become a one-to-one school district. So we've created a sustainability plan for our Chromebooks and for other technological needs. We're also going to continue to use our diagnostic assessment to pinpoint our strengths and our gaps. That again will guide our instruction moving forward. And in this rural part of Kentucky, the use of hotspots has been key for us to be able to provide instruction, remote instruction for our students. We have, in this part of the state, we have very, very few spots that have Wi-Fi access. So using those hotspots has been a great asset to our students. So we're going to continue that in the upcoming school year. And then our technology help desk is something that we've done that has been extremely beneficial for our families. It's open till 8 o'clock in the evening, and that gives families a place to call that they can get immediate assistance if their student is having difficulty. And then again, we'll continue to promote the Google certification. In the next list, these are just some areas that we're going to build a focus group around to explore. Textbooks versus technology is a discussion that we've been having in our district. We are now one-to-one district. So with that, we feel like that we need to come back a little bit towards the center and find a better balance with student engagement. And what does that look like? So that also goes back to that Kagan work that we want to do, and going back to what good solid instruction is, and then using that technology to support that. We have looking at comprehensive reading programs. How can we get books in the hands of students? And an area that we know we need to revisit is our multi-tiered system of support. And we have a solid program, but what we need to do a better job is of integrating that behavior and mental health supports in that program so that we're hitting all areas of the whole child. So we want to revisit that. And then looking at Imagination Library for our earliest learners, at-home learning kits for our early learners, our preschool, kindergarten students. And it's important not to forget our gifted and talented students in all of this. How can we further support their work? And then CTE and ATC summer camps. I think this is really exciting for students that may not traditionally be interested in coming to school in the summer, but how can we pull those students in to give them that hands-on exploration that they've missed so much of this school year? Tony, if you'll go forward. So pre-COVID, we had a digital learning academy in Rockcastle County, but we want to totally re-envision what that looks like. So we're looking at targeting grades 6 through 12 with this program for the upcoming school year. And we want to have a focus on innovation and using our ATC and our CTE classes to improve access to post-secondary education, the workforce, or the military. So we're envisioning some of our digital students being able to do their core classes in the AM and getting that work knocked out in the AM, and then coming into school to get their pathway courses, and we just feel like that will provide them the support they need to enter into the workforce post-graduation. And we're also looking at incorporating some virtual tutors and mentors and requiring weekly check-ins with these students. And our key is going to be flexible scheduling and personalized learning. How can we serve you? What can we do at the Rockcastle County Digital Learning Academy to better serve our students? And that's going to remain our focus, is flexibility and creativity. Tony, if you'll move forward. So I think that we've all have said this throughout our presentations. We cannot RTI ourselves out of learning loss. And I think that in speaking with our teachers, that this is going to be our focus, that we want to focus on the delivery of solid core instruction and just fill in those holes as we go. So we are actually, Friday in our leadership team, we're going to revisit the opportunity myth, because we know that that's what works. And we know that this is research-based, and this is what we are going to build our whole curriculum on next school year, is focusing on solid core instruction in every single classroom, and then using some interventionists to do some push-in work to address those learning holes that we know that we have. So we're looking at discussing with our board, hiring some district level interventionists and also a district level social worker to address those mental health needs that are so apparent with our students. Okay. Tony, if you want to move forward. The social emotional well-being is a topic that I think that we really have to put at the forefront of all of our discussions. We have many students in Rockcastle County, as I'm sure is the same across the entire state, that are really suffering right now. So our goal is to provide educational and trauma-informed care in an integrated manner. So we have developed a partnership with Rockcastle Pediatrics, and we are going to be administering the PHQ-2 Patient Health Questionnaire to all of our middle and high school students. Then we're going to use that data to flag any students that are experiencing signs of depression. We're going to work with Somerset Mental Health and Rock Peds to assist in developing service plans for these particular students. We're also going to be creating a community mentor program to work with these students that have been flagged through this questionnaire and survey. We're also using proactive counseling groups at each of our schools, and we're focusing on grief and trauma, children of incarcerated parents, students dealing with the impact of substance abuse, trying to be proactive instead of reactive in this area. And we're also going to use our district health mental coordinator and our school psychologists and Rock Pediatrics. We're going to partner all together to provide training for all of our certified and classified staff regarding trauma. We know that the bus driver is the first person that our students see in the morning. When they go through the cafeteria line, we know the impact of those great relationships that they build. So we want to ensure that all of our staff, both certified and classified staff, are trained in trauma so we can better serve our students. So thank you for the opportunity to share our ideas. Again, most of this is very preliminary, and we just look forward to partnering with our community partners to best serve our students this upcoming school year.
Thanks, Carrie. So impressive what you put together for Rockcastle. I'm excited to see how this unfolds in your community. All right, we're going to go over up to the banks of the Ohio River, the best part of Cincinnati, the Cincinnati area, to Fort Thomas Independent, and we've got the incredible Superintendent Karen Chesser on with some members of her team. Karen, tell us what you're going to do in Fort Thomas.
Sure, absolutely. So I do have Assistant Superintendent Bill Bradford and Assistant Superintendent Jamie Flaherty that are helping, and also Andy Remlinger, who is our Director of Finance, is available to answer questions as well. So the first thing that I think we wanted to say, if you go back to that, I'm sorry, Tony, the one right before that, is that, you know, one of the things that I think everyone's universal on is there's learning loss, there's social emotional loss. But I also think there were some skills that were learned during this pandemic, especially last spring, as we didn't know what was happening, and as our students have maybe more time sometimes to work on projects when they haven't been in school. And those are those skills that I know we call our Portrait of Graduate skills. Many of you have those same kinds of skills. We have never seen such communication and problem solving and courageous leadership and collaboration as we've seen during the pandemic. So I'm hoping that we all can get to a point too where we see, yes, there's quite a bit of loss, but there were some skills that were definitely gained, and that's great for kids. So if you go to the next one, Tony. You know, the great thing about Kentucky is that we have such great, strong support from our state, from our governor, but we also have some autonomy to do things the way we see fit for our community, with our boards, with our SBDM councils. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about our story here in Fort Thomas, and how we have used quite a bit of our funds already, but how we're trying to bring together funds out of the general fund and other sources to try to address many of the losses that our students have. Back in the spring, we realized that our students had loss, you know, that 2.5, 3 month time out of school. And our teachers came together to do planning both vertically, horizontally, and then also individually with students to sort of plan for what do we do next year. Unfortunately, even though there were gaps in curriculum, we had this year a lower number of days. We adopted the variable calendar and, you know, spread out days. We knew we needed many more days for teacher planning, but that reduced our days from 178 to 165. So you have this sort of perfect storm, bad storm of fewer days, curricula that teachers couldn't get to, and then also, you know, interruptions in student learning. And so we knew it was vitally important. Our board felt strongly that we wanted to get our students in school as much as possible, if it was at all possible. So a little bit of context about our district. We have 3,200 students, 5 schools, if you're not aware. And we have been in 5 days a week since September 17th, except, of course, those 3 weeks before Christmas break. And that was very important to our community and to our board. 92% of our students have gone in person the first semester and 96% the second semester. So you can see the numbers on how many chose remote. So from the beginning, kind of our key performance indicators or our parameters that we set back in May or June is that if at all possible, following every single Healthy at School guideline, which includes 6-foot distancing, we wanted all students to have the opportunity to go to school every day. They didn't have to choose that. But parents could choose remote instruction. We also were very clear that any teachers with documented medical conditions, you know, their doctor saying it's not okay for them to be at work, could teach remote, and that they would teach the remote students. And that also we were adamant that we were going to try as hard as possible for our teachers not to be responsible for both in-person and remote learning. Not that there would not be connections between the school and our students who chose remote learning, and not that our highly qualified Fort Thomas teachers wouldn't be teaching remote learning, but we just thought it was very hard to do both of those at the same time. So that's just a little context. Also need to let you know about our situation with free reduced lunch percentages, which of course have driven everything with ESSER funds. In 2014, the Fort Thomas board chose to leave the federal lunch program. The reason they chose to do that is because there was really a push for different kinds of food for our students and different kinds of opportunities. And they felt like the federal lunch program put too many restraints on there. Well, an unintended consequence is that it was our free and reduced lunch percentage dramatically dropped. And that was because we went from that more audit system to a extensive paperwork documentation system. And so we had fewer students that maybe qualified, but also maybe fewer families who even attempted to qualify. So we just sort of, had charges all the way up to the end of the year. Maybe then they would get forgiven. So it's just not a really great system. And we have changed that for this year, but it was a little too late in the funding mechanism for ESSER funds. So as you can see, you can compare that to your own. We received $730,000 total ESSER 1, ESSER 2 gear for a 3,200 student school district. So we are having to look for other funding sources, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and are really looking forward to some set-aside funds. But this is what we spent our money on to kind of, have school this year and to continue. We're not sure what the summer brings, what the fall brings, but everything from thermal cameras, we had to, buy more software, hardware. We brought in some trailers in order to have 6-foot distancing in our elementary schools. Cleaning supplies, of course, everybody has that. Also warehouse to store those, warehouse to store all that extra furniture that had to come out of classrooms. We did a lot of beg, borrow, desk around the state. Thank you for those of you who let us borrow those. And also we added a ton of outdoor furniture. You don't know how hard it was to find outdoor furniture in July and August in the middle of the pandemic. But I can definitely tell you about some of those sources. We went to Northern Ohio. So you can see that added up. In addition, all of our remote teachers who taught remotely, we had to have subs for their classrooms. I think we had 8 teachers who've been teaching remotely for our students in remote instruction. And so we had to pay for all year long subs for those teachers. Also, we have provided unlimited emergency days for our teachers and staff, and so that continues. We did add some additional staffing. We call them staff assistants, who are classified subs. And we also were looking forward to some FEMA money. So we thought we'd already submitted to FEMA when we found out that wasn't actually going to work. But our district was, very committed to trying to do whatever it took in order to bring our students back. So you can see, even with our ESSER funds, we did have a shortfall of about $360,000, which we're hopeful for additional funds or possibly FEMA or maybe some of the set-aside money. So that's our context, but Bill's going to talk a little bit about what have we found with learning loss. What are we doing to address that when we don't have this large pot of money? And then also Jamie will talk about social emotional support. So Tony, if you go ahead and go to the next one, please.
Well, much like the rest of the state, teaching and learning through COVID-19 has been an opportunity for growth. It's been a chance to become better and an opportunity to improve. We were really fortunate in that when we were considering a remote learning alternative option for families, we had a technology infrastructure that could really handle that challenge. Over the course of the past 7 to 8 years, certainly pre-pandemic, we had put into place a one-to-one technology initiative that put an actual device in the hands of each of our students. And our students were very fluent and familiar with utilizing those technology tools, both in person at school as well as at home remotely. So we have students in grades 6 through 12 who have been issued MacBook computers. And in grades K through 5, they have iPads. We first knew when we needed to transition very quickly to a full virtual experience for our students and staff that internet hotspots and the opportunity for free Wi-Fi were going to be crucial considerations to be able to remedy and rectify and find solutions. So the Last Mile Internet Grant has certainly been a support for us to take advantage of. And then we really utilized regional partners to help us fill that gap, and then also utilized our available resources within the district to supply certain families who needed that level of support with hotspot access in their homes. We were familiar already with a learning management system that transitioned really easily from in-person instruction to either NTI or also remote learning. We utilize the Microsoft Suite, so specifically Microsoft Teams for video conferencing. Schoology in grades 3 through 12 and then Seesaw in grades K through 2 as that main hub of communication and learning and resource database for both students and staff. Now, with Microsoft Teams, it was very interesting. We had never utilized a video conferencing software in Fort Thomas schools prior to March 13th of 2020. So it was incredibly important that within a very short 1 to 2 day window, our students and teachers received intense and immediate training in how to utilize that tool so that it could become our one option that was consistent and implemented with fidelity throughout the course of that NTI experience, and then even moving forward with virtual learning and remote learning alternatives this year. For remote learning, we partnered with all of our school leaders and SPDM councils to have site-specific decisions made as to what were the most appropriate virtual programs to offer as a second best option for students and families that elected to not have students return to in-person instruction. And so at the high school and middle school level, grades 6 through 12, we have moved forward with Edmentum courseware. At the elementary school level, our core instruction is coming through Edgenuity Pathblazer, and that is being supplemented with both IXL and MobyMax. At the high school level, we have additional layers of academic support. We're utilizing FEV Tutor in grades 9 through 12, and also AP Classroom for those students in grades 9 through 12 who are in those advanced level courses. We've also personalized and individualized our students' schedules at the high school level so that those students who needed AP access to courses that Edmentum perhaps did not immediately offer would continue to have that, both through coursework opportunities as well as access to AP and advanced level teachers. We've constantly thought through what does personalized learning look like throughout the entirety of the pandemic. And in doing so, we knew we needed to address academic skill gaps that were developing simply in the absence of like a normal school experience. And so IXL has really been an investment that we have taken advantage of in grades K through 8 to allow students to focus on both enrichment and academic intervention so that all students have the opportunity to continue to make forward progress. We've also partnered with MobyMax, specifically in grades K through 8 for students with exceptionalities so that they have a different layer of support and so that their teachers and that those students can utilize different mechanisms to be able to drive forward progress and also meet certain IEP goals or other individual plans for excellence. We have been analyzing STAR assessment data, which I'll return to shortly, to determine intervention needs. A few of our schools are Title I and obviously offer intervention services in person. So they have also made accommodations for students who are in a remote environment to receive similar services. And then because we've been able to isolate remote learning teachers throughout this experience, we have designated teachers assigned to remote learning students. And in addition to them having classes of whom they monitor, supervise, and interact with, we've also had those persons available to assign on an individual basis to students who just need individual tutoring and specific support. Our individual student acceleration options have really happened by applying advanced track curricula in our designated programs. So Edmentum at the high school level and Edgenuity at the elementary school level. And then also, again, allowing for our remote learning teachers to be able to individualize and differentiate for students in this remote environment so that they get exactly what they need. We have been monitoring academic progress really throughout the entire experience. But when you think about this year in particular, and especially with us being open for the majority of the academic school year, our students in remote learning have definitely had a very irregular and non-normal access to their instruction and to our practice. So we have utilized the Renaissance STAR assessment to monitor their progress twice in grades K through 8. And we're doing that for both reading and math. And we've been evaluating learning loss throughout the entirety of this school year. Most recently, we've done a full-scale analysis comparing fall 2020 to winter 2021, and then also looking back to the last academic school year, so fall 2019 and 2020 winter, to this year's fall 2020 and winter 2021. And here's what we've seen. So in comparing this year's fall and winter, we have percentile ranks for students in grades K through 8 that show mostly double-digit increases at the elementary school level. But when we examined our students' scores at the middle school level, grades 6 through 8, we found that there were mild decreases or somewhat flat scores, especially in reading. We saw significant increases overall when looking at scale scores from the STAR reading assessment. And that was definitely promising when you compared that against our scale scores. So then we went back and we looked at how did our students perform, or how were they performing 1 year ago, 1920, to this current academic school year. And what we saw was that our percentile ranks of students last year in 1920 were higher than those that were depicted in this year's academic scores, really across the board at all grade levels and in both content areas. But those scale scores that derive from the STAR assessment showed much higher numbers this year from fall to winter as compared to last year's fall to winter. So specifically this winter 2021, our students were demonstrating higher levels of accuracy and the ability to respond accurately to the questions that were being prompted up to them than we saw even 1 year ago pre-pandemic. We took a look at our grade equivalency levels that the STAR assessment is able to garner, and all of our grade levels across all schools showed higher relative levels of grade level equivalency as compared to where we were last year in particular. We definitely examined student growth percentiles for both reading and math, and here's what we found. At each grade level and at each school, we were above the 40th percentile on average, with the exception of simply one grade level at one school. So really that was an outlier. For us, the 40th percentile when examining the student growth percentile is important because it demonstrates a trajectory and more of a correlation as to 1 year's academic growth. So we already saw in winter 2021 that students were on average showing more or at least 1 year of academic growth. And we know that we still have 4 to 5 months of instruction left to complete. And really, most of our students were actually performing on average above the 60th percentile. So that was important. But I will say that we took a look at the student performance outlook on state assessments. So just like a majority of the formative assessment measures being used across the state, we utilize STAR to determine how would our students potentially perform on the K-Prep assessment or the state assessment. And so we found that at the elementary level, there was a significant increase in the rate of proficient and distinguished students from fall 2020 to winter 2021. Whereas at the middle school level, the percent of proficient distinguished students did also increase in math, but we saw flat rates of increase and even some decreased scores in reading at those grade levels. So that was definitely something that stood out for us when considering an evaluation of learning loss. And then really to kind of wrap up the teaching and learning piece, we know that we need to respond to student needs. We have been in some regard, and we're planning for our response really in moving forward. And one is really a trend that's been shared throughout the entirety of this presentation today, and that is some form of a summer bridge programming. We recognize that we need to move forward with some initial planning for specifically our remote learning students, those students who have not been in any one of our school buildings since March of 2020 and who will not be returning physically until August 2021. We need some sort of bridge opportunity to bring them back and prepare them for academic re-entry, both from an SEL, a social emotional standpoint, as well as targeted instruction, especially if they're at a transition grade level, to ensure that they're really ready to handle the complexity and the rigor of what is going to be forthcoming in their next series of studies. And then lastly, we're really focused on literacy and mathematics skill practice. And while we want to take advantage of online options, because certainly there are plenty and we've made a lot of investments, we also recognize that we're somewhat saturated, or our students are somewhat saturated in their online lives or having lives online. So we do want to take things offline to the maximum extent possible. So we are researching right now all available options for offline programs, strategies, and ways to engage students in ongoing learning outside of their tablets or outside of their MacBook computers. Tony, would you like to move to the next slide?
Thanks, Bill. The next section that we'd want to cover would be our mental health and social emotional support that we've been offering and want to offer as we continue through this school year and looking forward to 21-22. As is the case with all of the other districts, we wanted to make sure that we are monitoring our health and well-being of our students as well as our employees. So we were fortunate in November to administer the Resiliency Poll, which is an online screener through Terrace Metrics, and it's for students in grades 3 through 12. It's about a 20-minute survey, and each set of STEMs are normed reference. And with that, we were able to then dig into our data to see where we compared to previous years, as this was our 4th year with implementation. When reviewing the data, we recognized that we had equivalent scores that showed that we had similar results as in person when we gave the survey in past years. So again, the fall 2020 scores did not show the deficits that we anticipated as this survey was administered in person. We did, though, see with our at-risk, our most vulnerable population, that there was an increase or a new trend with ostracism. So we immediately wanted to put into action a plan to make sure that we had opportunities for our students to be engaged. With that, and with all of the survey data, we immediately then looked at our self-harm or anxiety and depression scores. We addressed those students, and our counseling staff, along with our district psychologist, offered appropriate plans that were communicated with the teaching staff as well as our parents to support those students. We did then also offer community resources that were wrapped into those plans. Moving forward, though, we knew that we needed to think about programming for students. And so we immediately looked at our extracurriculars, and we actually weren't offering many, as we were concerned, like many others, of opportunities outside of the school day, following Healthy at School, finding teachers wanting to be committed to the after school hours. What would that look like? But we've been able to make that happen. And so with following Healthy at School, we continue to increase opportunities for students outside of the school day to make them feel connected. We also use our advisory periods in the middle school and the high school to make sure that the teachers are building relationships with our students. And then furthermore, I know that Bill mentioned a summer bridge program that will focus on reading and math. We also have a summer enrichment course offering that we've had for many years. And in that offering, it may not be content based in the student's mind, as it may be a cooking class, it may be solving mysteries, it may be a forensics class. But in the end, they are focused on learning and working collaboratively with others. So we continue to have that in mind. We will have that flexible opportunity throughout many weeks in the summer. Typically, those courses are approximately about a week, and they are in a menu option so that students can choose what they would like to then participate in. Then furthermore, we do have a standing relationship with a nonprofit that's very close to us in Cincinnati. It's called 1 in 5, or to reference the website, it's 1in5.org. And there early on, we had surveys administered so that we could have baseline data for the mental health of our staff as well as our students. And so most recently, we've wrapped back around to them to talk about our data that we have. And then we're going to be analyzing that information with our counseling departments as well as our leadership teams to create plans with them moving forward for the future. Specifically right now, we want to make sure that we take an opportunity to focus on teachers, focus on wellness, opportunities for them for mindfulness. And so if you are curious about these, I know that there are toolkits that are listed for principals and teachers that could be a certain resource that you may find of value. Then we look to make sure that we also are considering our students' programming. And so looking at peer-to-peer options that we can incorporate for the next school year. And those have been discussions with our leadership team. And then finally, we look forward to then adding mental health priorities to our professional learning plan. Certainly, it's not solidified at this point, as we still need to grow and determine what our 21-22 professional learning plan will entail. Will we be virtual? What will the platform be? but we want to make it a priority to continue the work that we've already started. And at the beginning of this previous school year, we were actually all trained QPR through our 1 in 5 partnership. So looking at suicide awareness, talking to teachers about how to handle students who may need additional supports. And so at this time, we do feel like we are going to have a general mental health 101 module that will be mandatory for all employees, certified and classified, and that they will participate in that, have the supports necessary to be moving forward to help those in need. And then we also do want to consider the QPR training for our students, thinking outside of the box, having them support each other, and how to respond if a student comes to them wanting to ask questions more so about self-harm. How do they react and what should they do with their next steps? And then finally, or furthermore, we plan to administer the resiliency poll again in the fall of the 2021 school year, and we'll start the process over. So this is a continuous cycle as we look at our community partners to make and build the supports for our students in need.
So thank you for allowing us to share. I hear that there are questions for everybody, so we'll turn it back over. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen, and thanks, team from Fort Thomas. Appreciate all the work that you put into presenting to us. I feel a little bit like Wolf Blitzer on CNN now, but I have some breaking news that I need to talk about with all of you. I just during this conversation, superintendents, you received in your inbox a message from me. We've received notice that Governor Beshear is going to make an announcement at his 4 o'clock press conference today about a new executive order that's intended to allow for greater in-person instruction, notably a significant change to the color-coded matrix. So we'll make sure that we're off here in about 15 minutes. And so folks that want to jump over and watch that can keep an eye on that. Also, I was made aware that when we were talking earlier about information about the ESSER II funds and the KDE holdback that you should have received yesterday, I apologize. We had a problem with our Gov delivery system and sending that out. That has now been sent to you as well. So you should have that information to process through about the ESSER II funds, the KDE holdback, and the 2.0 Healthy at Schools omnibus guidance document that was also put forth as well. So those two things have come into your inbox just while we've been talking here. Just quickly, because we've only got minutes left here together, Tony, I'm just going to push us through some of these questions and make sure that we get them answered. I'm going to first turn to Bo Barnes. Bo, if you're still on with us, I'd like to just ask, based on what you heard folks say or some of the plans that our superintendents put forth around extended year, summer school programming, do you have any ideas or ways that retirees could fit into that, or some advice to our superintendents in using retirees in those extended day, extended year, summer school programs?
Again, if they can be encouraged to delay retirement, that's an opportunity. And for those, through summer school, and that probably for most of them, the greatest incentive would be just increased compensation at the end of the summer. They don't teach into the new school year. They can have a refund of the contributions, take on their summer school contributions during the account, get all that back. And for those who would like to reach out to us, maybe they would see a significant improvement in their retirement allowance. They work one more day in the regular school calendar for school year 21-22, and then they add that to their retirement. They would want to talk to our counselors and see if that would be in their best interest or not. But it seems like the focus has been on summer school, from what I'm hearing, that, to make up for the learning loss. So that's probably the easiest way to do it. Again, the executive order would be problematic because you can't tell anyone you're going to do it. You would have to, for example, say, issue the order June 1 and say, okay, because of the pandemic, there's no break in service for our retiring teachers who are retiring June 1 to go right back in the classroom. But that could only apply to people who are retiring June 1 or before. It could not apply to people who are going to retire after June 1. For example, July 1, which is our busiest retirement month, is right in the middle of summer school. So we look in those it's very problematic to make that that work, other than, you know, what the department sort of came up with, and that was, their idea was just to encourage folks to delay retirement.
Thanks, Bo. And if our school district leaders or potential retirees or employees have specific questions they'd like answered or some support on how what their options might be, is there someone in your office or a place that we could direct folks to reach out and contact for some technical support?
Absolutely. They may reach out to me, and my email is, for those who may not have it, it's Beau, B-E-A-U, Barnes, B-A-R-N-E-S, at trs.ky.gov.
Thanks, Bo. We appreciate you sticking with us and answering the questions that we had. We also have Dr. White's joined us. Dr. White, are you on as well?
Yes, I'm here listening in.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Dr. White. We always appreciate you being with us. We had a couple of questions come in that were related to COVID-19 mitigation strategies and guidance related to things like prom and graduation. I know that we've been bouncing around some thinking around that this week, but let's start with the question, a question that came in on the Google form around COVID-19 mitigation strategies and desk shields. Are desk shields now acceptable, advisable? What's your thinking and position on those? I know some of our districts are using those.
Yes, we initially, when we first started talking about this eons ago, like 5 months ago, it feels like 5 years ago, my personal reaction was negative. I was concerned about trauma. Someone could fall into one and poke an eye out. You know, I mean, I sound like my mother. But I think after conversation, we felt like as long as there weren't sharp edges, as long as they are cleaned regularly, that doesn't substitute for masks. It doesn't substitute for face shields, but it is one extra layer of mitigation. And as long as those can be kept clean, that would not be a problem to use those. And the fire marshal, we also cleared that with the fire marshals as well.
Great. Now, see that Dr. Foster has come on as well. Kelly, anything that you would add?
Sure. I would just say that if you look at the new KDE COVID-19 guidance document, that is on page 18 at the bottom, and it talks about temporary barriers, and it just restates everything that Dr. White just said. That's not new guidance. We released that many months ago, but it's at bottom of page 18 of the new document.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Dr. White. And that's come into your inbox as well, just with that Tuesday message or update that we just sent out. It should include a link to that Guidance 2.0 document and that searchable table of contents that's in there. Hopefully, it'll be a one-stop shop for you. A question came in around.
Commissioner Glass, to the other point that you made, Dr. Foster and I have printed out our guidance for all the spring events, and we are going line by line through those, and we'll be seeing what can we do differently and what will remain the same for spring events. So we are already actively looking at that.
Excellent. Thanks so much. I know a lot of our districts are getting questions around what do we do about prom? What do we do about graduations? And so it's reassuring to hear that you're on it, working on it. I think looking back at guidance that was out around graduations before, and now we know more, and we're in a different phase now. So how has that shifted? So we'll be looking for an update from you when that's available. Thank you. Sure. A couple of questions came in around more GEARS funding, more ESSER funding. Right now, the governor's remaining GEAR funding, the governor has authority over where that goes. So we'll defer to the governor's office on where they're going to spend that. I see Robin's on. Robin, are you aware, has the governor released information on where they're going to spend their GEARS funding?
No, we haven't received that information. We'll pass that along to districts as soon as we're aware of that. Of course, under the GEAR funding, there are various entities that GEAR money can go to. Local public school districts are entities, as well as institutes of higher education, educational partners. So there's quite a few groups of entities that could receive that funding.
Thanks, Robin. And there is talk in Congress of yet another round of COVID relief in some form. We're hearing that package may be even bigger than the one that we just received. There's not a lot that we know, or nothing definitive that we can share right now, but we'll keep you up to date just as that moves forward. And we get anything that's confirmed as far as what those amounts may be, what a part of that will be coming to schools, and how it can be used. But we're tracking that as well. Another question that has come up. I want to bring Dr. Woods Tucker on. He had a question around free and reduced lunch funding. Thomas, why don't you come on and ask that question? Oh, we can see you but can't hear you, Thomas.
Okay, let's try this. Thank you,
There you
Commissioner
go.
Glass, and all of our great folks who are on here, especially our heroic superintendents. One of the many bright moments about public education was on display last year and even on display right now, and that was our ability to educate students during this pandemic, but also ensure kids were eating. And just interested in this extended pandemic education that I'm calling. Are we going to continue to participate in the summer food service program, as you know, that provides food to all students regardless of income, or if we pivot back to the
Thomas, I'm so sorry.
national school lunch or breakfast program?
Yeah, Thomas, I'm so sorry.
Are in need.
Sorry, Thomas. Your internet connection is really unstable and broke up in that. We'll get that question from you and reach out to some of our superintendents and other great school administrators and get that answered, and also send it out to all the superintendents a little later on. Thanks so much. I'm sorry that we had that disruption in your in the middle of your question. I want to go back to Dr. White and Dr. Foster and ask this question of you. We had a question that came in on the KDE guidance, or I'm sorry, on the Google form, the Google question form, just as bringing kids back into the building, being mindful of social distancing, any changes or expected guidance on tornado drills, school safety drills, any changes around that?
So there's no changes around the drills. That same information stays the same as we released before. You know, typically if you're doing bus drills, you may have 5 buses pulled out front, and you're doing, you know, the bus is completely full. So I'll get you all a page number on that. But since we've been on here, the Center for School Safety has also released something out about the drills. So you still have to do those, but instead of doing 5 buses at a time that are packed with 3 kids to a seat, you still need to keep the social distancing in place when you're doing your tornado drills, your bus drills, just like we talked about last spring and even in the fall, those opening drills that are due those first 30 days. You still need to conduct those, but you're going to need to do them a little bit differently to ensure the social distancing guidelines. And then, of course, in the Healthy at Schools document, it does talk about 6 feet, but it does also say when 6 feet is not doable, the next best step is to try to keep them as far away as possible.
Thanks, Kelly. Another question that came in, Dr. White, anything you would add to that?
No, I agree completely with Dr. Foster.
Okay. Great, thanks so much. Another question that came in is, will schools or districts be required to provide remote or virtual learning options for students next school year? Right now, we're not hearing of anything that would require that. Of course, we may have other executive orders or things that come forward that require that. I do think that there's going to be significant demand in school districts for that kind of learning going forward. I think that the virtual learning option is going to be part of our education DNA going forward. It's going to be something that our parents are going to demand and that our students want. And honestly, I think for a small percentage of our students, it's going to be a better fit for them than a typical school experience. So I think the sort of school choice market is going to demand that districts consider how they can continue that going forward. Fortunately, we've all out of the necessity of this experience we've gone through, we've all gotten really good at figuring out how to do that over this past year. So I don't think it would be a huge lift for districts to figure out how to continue that in some form. I do think that it's going to be something that your parents are going to want going forward. So I think we've exhausted all of the questions that we had coming in through the Google form. I did have one question just for our panelists and our superintendents and any of the guests that we have on, with the last couple of minutes that we have left. Thinking about those summer academies or the extended programs that you discussed, tell us, a couple of you, what experiences would a student have in those? What would a typical session or a day in one of those, in one of your summer programs or those extended learning programs look like? So anybody jump in, and we've just got a couple of minutes.
I'll be happy to jump in from Fayette County. We are leaning towards our day being about 4 hours of instruction. Obviously, like all of us have said, we want it to be different than typical school. So we are looking, again, some schools may look at it like a camp model. Others may do themes, STEM 1 week, gardening 1 week, something that may give them themes throughout the summer to bring in guest speakers and to bring in community partners. But as always, there will be a focus on the academics as well with literacy and math. We will focus on some credit recovery. And we're also encouraging our schools to look for students who have just missed opportunities. What about those AP chemistry kids who missed having the hands-on labs? How can we incorporate them into our Summer Ignite as well?
Thanks, Minnie. And just in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and bring our session to a close here. We really would love to have heard from other of our superintendent panel or other honored guests about some of their thinking on that same question, but appreciate Fayette County sharing some of their thoughts around what that experience might look like. Just again, 2 quick breaking items. Make sure that you tune into the governor's press event coming up. That's in your inbox to check on that, about that change to changing executive order and how that may impact in-person instruction. So make sure that you're tracking that. Also look in your inbox for that message just sent from me on the now a Tuesday message around the ESSER funding and some thinking around that. And we look forward to continuing to work with you on that. Thanks to all of our superintendents and presenters who pulled together these great presentations for us today. Take care, everybody.